Say hello to my wet pet, aka Troublesome. Costa Rican Novi, full of attitude, as you can see. Very aggressive, very interactive. Real man movement. Salute family, Tank Commander Zulu back at you once again in that Real Man Movement. Today here at the Real Man Movement, we're going to be dealing with the subject of nepotism. The good, the bad, and the ugly sides of nepotism. And how a real man and real woman deal with the sides of nepotism in today's environment. Let's talk about it here today with Tank Commander Zulu and that Real Man Movement. Find the hole, baby. Salute family, Tank Commander Zulu back at you once again and that Real Man Movement. Before we get off into the topic of discussion, I would like to invite everyone to become a subscriber to the channel. And if you are not a subscriber, I invite you to become a subscriber today. And also, if you are into boxing and combat sports, I suggest you go over to Dante's Boxing Nation, baby. Baddest brand in the land. If you want to hear the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports and what goes on in the confines of sports, then I suggest you go over and subscribe to Dante's Boxing Nation. I'll have the information in the description below. Now back to the topic of discussion. Nepotism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, let's talk about nepotism for a minute. You know, nepotism is something that is deeply seated in American core values. And let me explain that. First of all, let me get down and let's talk about what nepotism really is. And not to insult anyone, but I want to make sure that everything is plain on this channel. That we don't try to speak above anyone or below anyone, but we be all on that one accord. But talking about nepotism, nepotism is simply a way of showing favoritism. It's a way of showing favoritism to a family member or a friend over anyone else. Nepotism is something that traditionally exists inside of the workplace. Nepotism can exist in other entities as well. And believe it or not, it exists in the church, y'all. And we're going to talk about that. But we understand what nepotism really is. It's favoritism towards people of choice. Could be your brother, your sister, your father, your mother, a family member, or a good friend. You're showing favoritism to them above anyone else. And that's all nepotism truly is. But now we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of nepotism. Because there are sides to this thing. In my opinion, all nepotism is not bad. But now there's some forms of nepotism that, depending on the social structure where nepotism is existing, there's some forms that can be ugly, that can be bad. And in its existence, it affects other people. It doesn't give them the opportunity or the chance to succeed or to show their personal value. See, nepotism can do that as well, and that's a bad thing. But the ugliest thing of nepotism, the ugliest thing concerning nepotism is that it branches off into other isms. Racism, sexism, all of those other little isms, nepotism has the potential to break off into those subcultures, or those pretty subdivisions, I'm going to call them, of social interaction. And that turns into a very ugly thing. Nepotism turns into something that's, it's offensive. Nepotism, in many cases, is the reason why affirmative action was even birthed. Because all of it began with nepotism, which turned into racism, classism, sexisms, and all those other isms that made the majority of people become excluded and not included. And only a certain genre of people included. Now, we know America's story. I don't have to be on this channel keep telling America's story over and over and over again. We know the story. We know that racism exists in America. We know that slavery is the beginning of America, so to speak. So by understanding that, we understand that nepotism became a valuable part of the American culture. Now remember, we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of nepotism. Like I said earlier, nepotism in some ways I think is good. It can be good. It can be good. It's not nothing wrong if I own a business and I want my son to prosper and I bring him into the business. And I bring, my family members into the business. There's many businesses in America that are ran that way. They're called family-owned businesses. A family-owned business is an example of nepotism in a positive form. There's many other cultures that come to America, start their businesses with just their family members, without hiring anyone else. You can walk into a store and there's nothing but their people there. And that's a form of nepotism. Now, that's not bad in my opinion. I can understand, coming from another country, you and your family, you begin ownership, you begin a business, and you operate that thing as a family business. You may not hire anyone else. It may stay small. It may not never grow. But you are making sure that your family is taken care of through this business. Now, that's nepotism. That's a good form of nepotism. Now, let's talk about the bad form of nepotism. The bad form of nepotism is that when there are companies and there's businesses that have already been established, and because we understand the history of America, everyone in America did not have the same start. So meaning that we didn't have the same start, that there's other cultures that have been progressing, that have been established already. Their businesses have grown generationally. Their companies have grown generationally. And because nepotism does have a good side, they let their family members become part of the growing business and even inherited those businesses. Now, that's for one particular culture. Now, other culture who didn't have that opportunity because of slavery, and we just have to call it what it is, trying to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, as some people say, which is an insane saying. That's a whole nother video, but we'll discuss it later on. But to the other culture who's struggling to for civil rights, for human rights, and now trying to go into the workforce and to sustain a living. Nepotism, because that particular culture runs into nepotism. The bad side of nepotism, where these companies and these institutions have been ran by one particular culture for so long that they don't extend their arms to other cultures. And if they do, they don't give them anything promising They will give them something menial at best. But they will take their own friend or family member and place them in a higher position, whether they're qualified or not. Listen, I know I'm not the only one that can attest to the fact that I've seen many people in positions who were simply not qualified, but they knew the owner, or they were related to the owner. So the owner makes his son a manager who can't manage a bag of potato chips, who has no leadership skills, but he makes him a leader, or makes her a leader. See, that's the bad side of nepotism. So that when the other cultures do finally get an opportunity to come aboard, they're not put in or placed in positions that they're capable of doing, because nepotism, the bad side of nepotism, is showing in those people who are descendants of the owners or friends of the owners or some type of way socially attached to the owners. They are placed in those positions whether they're able to do them adequately or not. So in other words, a person who doesn't know what they're doing can become your boss simply because they're related to the owners of that company. That's nepotism. That's a bad side of nepotism. Now, we talked about the good side. We're talking about, that's a pretty bad side of nepotism. It's one of the reasons that affirmative action was ever created in the beginning. And now let's talk about that ugly side of nepotism. That impenetrable, ugly side of nepotism that creates the other isms. Racism, sexism, all types of little isms that ugly side of nepotism creates. It creates a barrier around these companies and businesses that have been owned by this one particular culture or this one particular class of people. They will not, at any cause, allow anyone else to come into the upper tier of management or the upper tier of any area in the business. If they even let you get into the lower tier, there's no room for progression. There's no room for achievement. There's just a stagnant place there. And then they'll try to make you believe that you should be happy that you even have a job there. You see, that's the ugly side of nepotism. You see, nepotism can produce people who are not qualified to be in the position that they've been placed to be in. And many times you'll see owners' sons or their daughters placed in management where they have no understanding about managing nothing. And some of the workers that may be at that company may have been around 10, 15, 20 years in charge, in managerial positions. If not actually a manager, they have been managing things. They have showed themselves to be capable and competent. But now, because of nepotism, they're passed over for this job that they've probably always thought they would get. You know, they probably dreamed of working hard and getting to this position, and now here comes the owner's son. He gets the job. Or the owner's brother-in-law. He gets the job. Sister-in-law. She gets the job. Daughter. She gets the job. Old college buddy. He gets the job. You see, that's the things that nepotism can do. And it doesn't mean because these people have these positions that they are qualified. They may not be able to lead themselves around the block. Trust me, I've seen it way too many times. You see, that's the thing concerning nepotism. Nepotism can be dangerous, and even scripturally in the Bible. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. The prophet Samuel had 2 sons. He was a prophet at this time. And when he got old and was getting ready to go, he assigned two of his sons, Joel and Abijah, to take over as judges of Israel. Now I want you to listen to this. This is in the Bible now. It's 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. The way this story goes is that Joel and Abijah are now, because of nepotism, because of being the prophet Samuel's sons, they are placed as judges over Israel. This is before Israel had kings. They've been placed as judges. Their father is Samuel, who was used mightily by God. He had created a great relationship and a great reputation in the eyes of Israel because of his relationship and communication with God. Now his children was something different. They didn't have the same relationship. They weren't used the same way that Samuel was used. But yet Samuel placed them as judges over Israel. And they became corrupt. You see, in other words, they weren't fit to judge Israel. They became greedy. They became high-minded. They became evil in all sorts of ways. You see, that was a form of nepotism right there in the Bible. 2 Samuel even talks about it with King David and his son Absalom. Absalom was placed in these positions that he was placed in because his father was King David. And what did that turn into? It turned into an ugly civil war between David and Absalom. You see, that's the ugly side. That's an example of the ugly side of nepotism. Placing someone in a position that they're not ready for or they're not called to be in. And when you put a person like that in a position of power or authority, well, you have chaos. You have the ugly side of things. See, like in 2 Samuel, concerning King David and his son Absalom. Can you imagine going to war, direct war with your own son? As much as you've tried to avoid it, because of nepotism, you place him in places that he had no business being in. And the result of that was an ugly thing. See, we're talking about nepotism, the good, the bad, and the ugly sides. It's favor. Nepotism is favor, but sometimes it's favor that is used the wrong way. It's showing favoritism in a way that it destroys instead of builds. But like we said, there's different sides of nepotism. There are some good things that can be seen and found in nepotism. It's surely a good thing when you see people that come from another country who can bond together. They can pool their resources together, which we have a problem, in particularly in the black community, doing and achieving anything. But these other cultures can come from other places, come to America, pool their resources together, pool their efforts together, create a business, and you won't see nobody outside of their family in that business. But they're managing and they're making a way. They're making a way out of a way that seems like there was no way. You see, that's a positive form of nepotism. Sure, they're looking out for their children. Sure, they're looking out for their relatives. Sure, they're looking out for their friends from their culture. And nothing's wrong with that. We as Americans, we should be able to learn from that, in particularly in the black community. We got to learn from that. We got to stop saying, look, it's all about me. Long as I'm good, I'm not worried about nobody else. But hopefully and prayerfully, we can all get to the place where nepotism is no longer your family. It's no longer just a friend. But as brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, that we show that kind of mutual love to one another. That we look to help each other. Doesn't make a difference what the color is. Doesn't make a difference what the social background is. Doesn't make a difference what the educational level is. And see, I said nepotism doesn't only exist in the business side, but I use the business side because that's something a lot of people can relate to. But now us as who call ourselves Christians, those who call themselves Christians and the church, there's nepotism that's been shown in the church. As many times we've seen a pastor place his son in charge after he's gone on. Or the son tries to take over, or the daughter tries to take over, who cannot lead, who was not called to be a pastor. But because of nepotism, they want the church to stay in the family instead of let the church be where God wants it to be. So that nepotism that can be a good thing turns to a bad thing, and then turns to an ugly thing. Because just like with the church, when you put someone there who cannot lead in the position of leadership, the good that you try to do will turn to bad. That bad will turn to ugly. And then everything that was built and created is no more. You see, just like the prophet Samuel, because of the corruption of his two sons, Israel no longer wanted judges. They called for a king when they never had a king before. Because, you see, that's one of the things that nepotism that turns from bad to ugly. It may have started good, but it goes from good, bad to ugly. That's what it can produce. And well, once Israel got that king who was King Saul, they regretted that they had him. I'm going to stop the tank tonight with that one, family. But listen, remember, if you are not a subscriber, I need you to go and subscribe today. Hit the thumbs up button. It is greatly appreciated by the Tank Commander. We need thumbs up. And leave a comment. As long as it's positive, we can develop a conversation. And remember, fear no man but God, baby. No man but God. Tank Commander Zulu, signing out.